My parents hid my brother's dangerous obsession with my fiancée until he ruined our wedding. Now he's been arrested for breaking into her house. I, 28M, was about to get married to my fiancée, Emma, 27F, 5 months ago. My brother Jake, 32 million, ruined everything when he made her leave me at the altar. I need advice on how to handle this situation because I'm lost and angry. I need to give you all some background to understand the whole situation. Jake and I grew up in a middle-class family in a small town in Michigan. Our dad worked as an engineer and mom was a high school teacher. They weren't rich, but made sure we had everything we needed. Jake was 4 years older than me, and we had very different personalities growing up. Jake was always the life of every party. He made friends easily, and people were drawn to his personality. He played football in high school and dated the popular girls. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid who liked computers and spent weekends building websites. Jake used to tease me about being antisocial, but would beat up anyone else who tried to bully me. That's what makes this whole situation more painful. He was always protective of me growing up. Things changed when Jake went to college. He started partying more and his grades dropped. He changed majors 3 times before dropping out in his 3rd year. Our parents were disappointed but never really pushed him to go back. They kept saying he needed to figure things out on his own. Jake started working different jobs, bartender, sales, real estate, but never stuck to anything for more than a few months. I took a different path. I studied computer science, graduated with good grades, and got a job at a tech company right after college. Within 3 years, I was leading my own team and making good money. Jake would often make comments about how I was mom and dad's favorite now, but I thought he was just joking. I met Emma 3 years ago at a friend's birthday party. She worked as a graphic designer and we clicked immediately over our love for design and technology. She was beautiful, but what really attracted me was how she could light up any room with her smile. She was kind to everyone and so genuine in her interactions. We started dating and everything felt perfect. Jake's behavior changed when things got serious between Emma and me. He would show up uninvited when we were having dinner, claiming he was just in the neighborhood. He would tell embarrassing stories about my childhood whenever Emma was around. Once, he even mentioned my ex-girlfriend at a family dinner and talked about how perfect we were together. Emma laughed it off, but I could see she was uncomfortable. 2 years into our relationship, I proposed to Emma during a trip to California. I had planned everything: sunset at the beach, her favorite flowers, her best friend hiding nearby to take pictures. She said yes, and we both cried. When we announced it at a family dinner, everyone was happy except Jake. He just smiled and said, "Let's see how long this lasts." The wedding planning went smoothly. Emma and my mom got along great, and they handled most of the arrangements. Jake, surprisingly, offered to be my best man. I was hesitant given his behavior, but Mom insisted I give him the role. She said it would help us bond as brothers. That was my biggest mistake. The wedding was planned for May 15th. We invited 200 people, family, friends, colleagues. Everything was perfect. That morning, I remember standing at the altar waiting for Emma. She looked beautiful in her white dress as she walked down the aisle with her dad. Right before they reached the altar, Jake stood up. I'll never forget what happened next. Jake cleared his throat and said, "I can't let this happen." Everyone turned to look at him. He pulled out his phone and said, "My brother deserves to know the truth. Emma has been cheating on him, with me, for the past 6 months." The church went completely silent. Jake started reading texts supposedly between him and Emma, describing their secret meetings and intimate moments. Emma's face went pale. She dropped her bouquet and ran out of the church. Her parents and sister ran after her. I couldn't move for a few seconds, then rage took over, and I punched Jake in the face. He fell over the pews, and my groomsmen had to pull me back. Mom was crying, Dad was trying to calm everyone down, and guests were whispering and taking videos. I drove home in my tux and started drinking. Around midnight, Emma called. She was crying and admitted everything. She said she was lonely because I worked late hours, that Jake was always there to talk, and that one thing led to another. She said she loved me but was confused. I hung up and blocked her number. The next morning, I packed some bags and drove to a hotel. I couldn't stand being in our apartment with all the wedding gifts and her things. I called my boss and took 2 weeks off, then started applying for jobs in different cities. I was lucky that a position opened up in Chicago. I took it even though it was a step down from my current role. I moved within 2 weeks, leaving most of my stuff behind. Mom and Dad tried to talk to me, but I told them I needed space. They still call every week, but I keep our conversations short. They keep saying Jake is sorry, that he was drunk and didn't mean to do it, that he's my only brother. But how do you forgive someone who deliberately ruined your life? Yesterday, Jake showed up at my apartment in Chicago. I don't know how he got my address. He was drunk and looked terrible, unshaved, wearing dirty clothes. He kept crying and saying he regrets everything. He said Emma left town 2 months ago and he hasn't heard from her since. He said he lost her and lost his brother too. I slammed the door in his face and called security to remove him from the building. Mom called an hour later crying, saying I should forgive Jake because he's family and he's hurting too, but I don't think I can ever trust him again. He didn't just have an affair with my fiancée. He chose to expose it in the most humiliating way possible, in front of everyone I know. I need advice on what to do next. My parents want me to talk to Jake, but I don't think I'm ready. Part of me wants to forgive him because he's my brother, but another part wants to never see him again. How do you move past something like this? Update 1 first. I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and messages. I've been reading them all, even though I haven't responded. The past 2 weeks have been a complete roller coaster, and I need to share what happened. 3 days after I made my post, I was at work trying to focus on a new project when I received an email from Emma's sister, Sarah. The subject line was "The Truth About Jake." I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. What Sarah revealed turned my whole world upside down. Jake had been stalking Emma for months before the wedding. It started with casual texts about wedding planning, which seemed normal since he was the best man. But then he started showing up at her design studio during lunch breaks, claiming he was in the area. Emma thought he was just being friendly and trying to be a good brother-in-law. Things got darker in March, 2 months before the wedding. Jake started messaging Emma from different numbers. At first, it was just compliments about how she deserved better than me, how she was too good for our family. When Emma blocked these numbers, he created fake social media accounts to contact her. He would describe what she was wearing that day or where she had lunch, proving he was following her. Sarah attached screenshots of over 50 messages from Jake. They were disturbing to read. In one message, he threatened to hurt himself if Emma told me about the messages. In another, he said he would tell everyone at the wedding that they were having an affair unless she left me at the altar. Emma was terrified but didn't know what to do. She tried to handle it herself because she knew how much I cared about Jake and didn't want to cause problems between us. The texts Jake showed at the wedding? Sarah proved they were fake. Jake had used some message generator app to create fake conversations. He had even edited some photos to make it look like he and Emma were together in places she had never been. I felt sick reading all this. The signs were there. Jake's constant presence, Emma's discomfort around him, her being distracted in the weeks before the wedding. I was too blind to see it. I remembered how Emma would sometimes check her phone anxiously or how she seemed nervous when Jake was around. I had attributed it to wedding stress. With shaking hands, I called my parents. Mom answered, and I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time, then started crying. She finally confessed something they had kept from me. Last year, Jake had been seeing a psychiatrist for what the doctor called obsessive tendencies and boundary issues. He went for 3 months, but stopped, claiming he was fine. My parents believed him and didn't tell me because they thought he was better. Dad got on the phone and filled in more details. Apparently, Jake had shown similar behavior with a coworker at his last job. He became fixated on her until she had to complain to HR. He quit before they could fire him. My parents paid for his therapy after that incident, but kept it quiet because they thought it was a one-time thing. I spent that night going through old photos and messages, seeing everything in a new light. All those times Jake showed up uninvited, all his comments about Emma being too good for me, it wasn't brotherly teasing. He had been laying groundwork for months. I tried calling Emma, but her number was still disconnected. Sarah told me Emma moved to London 2 weeks after the wedding. She had a job offer there that she had originally planned to turn down, but after everything that happened, she decided to take it. Sarah said Emma was still traumatized. She has trouble sleeping, and seeing wedding dresses triggers panic attacks. She needs professional help to process everything. Word got back to Jake that I knew the truth. He started calling me non-stop from different numbers. Sometimes he would apologize, crying about how he needed help. Other times he would get angry, accusing me of turning our parents against him. He even called my boss, trying to convince him that I was spreading lies about him. Finally, Dad stepped in. He and Mom drove to Jake's apartment and found him in bad shape. The place was a mess, with walls covered in photos of Emma and rambling notes. They convinced him to check into a mental health facility. He agreed, but I think it was only because he had nowhere else to go. I feel horrible about everything. I was too quick to believe the worst about Emma. I let my insecurities about our relationship cloud my judgment. Jake knew exactly how to manipulate that. He knew I sometimes worried that Emma was too good for me, and he used it against us. Sarah promised to give Emma my number if she ever wants to talk. I wrote her a long email apologizing for not seeing what was happening and for not protecting her from Jake. I don't expect a response, but I needed her to know the truth. My parents call daily now. Mom cries a lot, blaming herself for not seeing how sick Jake was. Dad is quieter, but I can tell he's struggling too. They failed both their sons. Jake by not getting him the help he needed earlier, and me by not warning me about his issues. I'm still processing everything. My anger has shifted from Emma to Jake, and now increasingly toward my parents for hiding Jake's problems. Part of me understands they were trying to protect him, but their silence caused so much damage. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Right now, I just needed to share this with someone. The truth was worse than what I initially believed, but at least now I know what really happened. Update to the situation has gotten much worse since my last update. Jake's behavior has escalated, and I've discovered even more disturbing things about his past. Jake only stayed at the mental health facility for 3 weeks. The doctors diagnosed him with several mental health issues and recommended long-term treatment, but he refused to continue. He claimed everyone was conspiring against him and checked himself out against medical advice. My parents couldn't force him to stay because he's an adult. Last Tuesday, Jake showed up at my office in Chicago. I was in a meeting when my coworker messaged me that my brother was in the lobby demanding to see me. By the time I got there, he was yelling at the receptionist. He looked terrible. He had lost weight, his clothes were dirty, and he hadn't shaved in weeks. When he saw me, he started screaming about how I ruined his life by spreading lies. He said Emma would have been with him if I hadn't poisoned everyone against him. Security had to physically remove him while he kept shouting that he would prove everyone wrong. My boss called me into his office afterward and suggested I take paid leave until things settle down. He was understanding but concerned about workplace safety. That evening, I received a Facebook message from Mark, Jake's old roommate from college. He said he saw my original post through a mutual friend and needed to tell me something important. We met for coffee the next day, and what he told me made my blood run cold. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Jake had done something like this. During their sophomore year in college, Jake became obsessed with Mark's girlfriend, Katie. It started similar to Emma's situation. Jake would accidentally run into Katie around campus, send her friendly messages, and try to hang out when Mark wasn't around. When Katie rejected his advances, Jake started spreading rumors that she was cheating on Mark with him. When that didn't work, he vandalized her car and left threatening notes. Katie's family wanted to press charges, but Jake's psychiatrist testified that he was having a mental health crisis and needed treatment, not punishment. The college kept everything quiet, and Jake agreed to take a semester off for treatment. The most shocking part, our parents knew about all of this. Mark showed me emails from them to Katie's parents, begging them not to press charges and promising Jake would get help. They paid for his treatment and then helped him transfer to a different college where nobody knew about the incident. I confronted my parents about this. Mom broke down and admitted everything. They thought Jake had gotten better after treatment, but when he started showing similar signs last year, they got him back into therapy, but they never told me because they didn't want to prejudice me against my brother. They really believed he was past all this. I confronted my parents about this. Mom broke down and admitted everything. They thought Jake had gotten better after treatment, but when he started showing similar signs last year, they got him back into therapy. But they never told me because they didn't want to prejudice me against my brother. They really believed he was past all this. To make things worse, Jake has been posting about me and Emma on Facebook. He created a long post claiming Emma had been leading him on for months and that I manipulated her into moving to London to keep them apart. Most people know he's lying, but some of his old friends have been sending me angry messages calling me a terrible brother. Then, yesterday, something unexpected happened. Emma called me. Her voice was shaky, but she sounded stronger than the last time we spoke. She's doing better in London, though she still goes to therapy twice a week. She started seeing someone new, a British guy she met through work. It hurt to hear that, but I'm genuinely glad she's moving on. She also told me Jake had been emailing her company's general address trying to reach her. Her boss had to get their IT department to block all emails from his addresses. She asked if Jake was getting help, and I had to tell her about him leaving the facility. She started crying, then saying she feels guilty about everything falling apart. I assured her none of this was her fault. I feel like I'm watching my family implode in slow motion. Mom spends most of her time crying and trying to reach Jake, who now refuses to talk to them too. Dad is aged 10 years and 2 months. They're seeing a family therapist to deal with everything, but decades of enabling Jake's behavior can't be fixed in a few sessions. I've changed my phone number and asked my apartment building to put Jake on their watch list. I'm documenting everything in case I need to get a restraining order. Mark offered to testify about the college incident if needed. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Right now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water and focus on work. Thanks for all the support. This community has been incredibly helpful during this nightmare. Last month, Jake was arrested for breaking into Emma's parents' house in Michigan. Their neighbor saw him breaking a window at 2 a.m. and called the police. When officers arrived, they found Jake in Emma's old bedroom, going through her things. He had a backpack containing her old photos, some jewelry she had left behind, and her high school yearbook. The police searched his car and found something that chilled me to my bones. Jake had detailed plans about traveling to London to find Emma. He had printed out information about her company's London office, researched nearby apartments, and even had a fake British ID. There were also printouts of Emma's LinkedIn profile and what looked like surveillance photos of her parents' house. Emma's parents pressed charges this time. The prosecutor used the evidence from his car to show he was planning to stalk Emma internationally. Given the previous incidents and his recent behavior, they weren't willing to let him off easy this time. Jake took a plea deal. He'll spend 6 months in a secured mental health facility, followed by 3 years of probation. He's not allowed to leave the country or contact Emma or her family in any way. The judge made it clear that if he violates these terms, he'll face serious prison time. My parents finally stopped defending him. Finding out about his plans to follow Emma to London broke something in them. Mom admitted they failed as parents by always protecting him from consequences. Dad hasn't spoken to Jake since the arrest. They're both in therapy now, trying to understand how things got this bad. I got a job offer from a tech company in Seattle last week. It's a great opportunity, better pay, and most importantly, a fresh start on the opposite coast from all this drama. I accepted it immediately. I need to build a new life where I'm not known as the guy whose brother ruined his wedding. Emma and I had one final conversation over video chat before I decided to write this update. She's thriving in London, the new job is going well, and she's moved in with her British boyfriend. Seeing her happy and healthy helped me find some peace. We both apologized for how everything ended, even though we now know none of it was our fault. She wished me luck in Seattle, and we agreed this would be our last conversation. Some chapters need to stay closed. I've officially gone no contact with Jake. My lawyer helped me file paperwork stating I don't want any contact from him when he's released from the facility. Maybe someday, if he gets serious help and shows real change, we can try to rebuild some kind of relationship, but I'm not counting on it, and I'm no longer letting that possibility hold me back. Mom and Dad are hurt by my decision to move across the country, but they understand. Dad even helped me find an apartment in Seattle. Mom promised to respect my boundaries about not discussing Jake with me. They're trying to rebuild our relationship separate from their relationship with Jake, and I appreciate that effort. Looking back at my original post, I was so angry and confused. Now I just feel sad. Sad for the brother I lost. Sad for the wedding day that was stolen from us. Sad for the years my parents spent enabling Jake's behavior. But I'm also hopeful about my future for the first time in months. I'm sharing this final update, hoping it helps someone else dealing with family betrayal. Sometimes the hardest decision is accepting that toxic family ties need to be severed, even temporarily, for everyone's well-being. Thanks for all the support throughout this nightmare. It's time for me to start my new life in Seattle.